Football is a results business. That's the cliche, right? Win games, lift trophies, and you climb the ladder. Fail, and you drop down it. Simple. But what if I told you there's another ladder? One that doesn't care about medals or league finishes. One that doesn't punish failure in the way we'd expect. In fact, sometimes it rewards it. Because every so often in football, a strange thing happens. A manager struggles in one job, underachieves in another, maybe even outright fails. And yet, somehow, instead of going backwards, they move upwards. Instead of getting a smaller job, they land a bigger one. Instead of disappearing, they become even more visible. And it's not just once or twice. It's a pattern we've seen again and again. These aren't managers climbing the game by proving themselves the hard way, fighting for promotions, grinding out results. No, these are managers who skip steps. Managers who, by reputation and by perception, by timing, by narrative, fall upwards. Take Russell Martin. At MK Dons and Swansea, he earned plaudits for playing attractive, possession-heavy football, but never actually delivered anything close to promotion. Then came Southampton, a Premier League club fighting to survive. Under Martin in the same season, they were relegated. On paper, a clear failure. And yet, what was his next move? A step down the ladder? A return to the Championship? No. He was handed one of the biggest jobs in British football. Rangers. A club where the demand is not for patience, not for philosophies, but for trophies. Martin is admired more for his style than his substance. Yes, he's got a promotion with Southampton, but he's also got a relegation. His CV is uneven, yet somehow that was enough to land him one of the most demanding jobs in Britain. That's the essence of failing upwards. The reputation outweighs the results. And Russell Martin isn't alone. There's a pattern here. A type of manager who seems to defy the supposed logic of football. They don't need trophies to get a big job. They don't need promotions to land the top seat. What they have instead is reputation, perception, timing, the sense that they could be the future if only the right club takes the gamble. And that's what we're going to explore today, is what I'm calling the Failing Upwards Theorem. Now, to be clear, this isn't about bad managers. For the most part, these are intelligent football minds, often highly respected, often admired for their style or their character. Some even have moments of brilliance, but when you look at their careers in black and white, the actual achievements, the trophies, the promotions, the consistency, it doesn't add up. The CV doesn't match the job title. And yet, football keeps giving them chances. Big chances, elite chances. Why? Maybe it's because they talk a good game. Maybe it's because they look like the future. Or maybe because in a world obsessed with finding the next great visionary, clubs are willing to gamble on potential over proof. So today, we're going to break it down. 4 managers, 4 case studies. Each one a chapter in the story of the Failing Upwards Theorem. From underwhelming records, to shock appointments, to jobs they arguably never should have landed. We'll piece together how failure, paradoxically, became the launchpad for opportunity. Because in football, as we're about to see, you don't always have to win to end up on top. Graham Potter's story doesn't actually begin with failure. In fact, it begins with one of the most remarkable success stories you'll hear. At Little Östersunds in Sweden, Potter pulled off a footballing miracle, taking a tiny 4th division side all the way to the Europa League, even beating Arsenal at the Emirates. That's the stuff of legend. And it was more than results. Potter built a culture. His team wasn't just playing football, they were performing plays, ballet, even singing to bring the squad together. It was quirky, innovative, and most importantly, it worked. That's why Swansea came calling, and it made sense. An English coach proving himself abroad, earning the right to step into the Championship. Potter was seen as a thinker, a moderniser, a man with fresh ideas. And while he didn't win promotion, people liked what they saw. The possession football, the tactical detail, the sense that here was someone who could be different. Then came Brighton, and again, Potter was praised. He steadied the ship, made them harder to beat, gave them an identity. But let's be clear, Brighton under Potter weren't pulling up trees. Mid-table finishes, decent football, yes, but no trophies, no European places. And yet, the buzz around him kept growing. Why? Because he looked the part. He sounded the part. He was the progressive English manager people wanted to believe in. And that's when Chelsea came calling. Suddenly Graham Potter had one of the biggest jobs in football. A squad worth hundreds of millions, and the chance to prove his philosophy on the biggest stage. And what happened? Utter chaos. Potter looked out of his depth. His Chelsea side couldn't score, couldn't defend, couldn't string together results. His win percentage was dreadful. His press conferences, instead of inspiring, made him look more and more like a man overwhelmed. This wasn't Ostersund's anymore. This wasn't the mid-table Brighton project. This was Chelsea, and he failed miserably. Now in a modern world, that's where the story ends. Big job, big failure, back to square one. But not for Potter. Somehow, despite showing he couldn't handle Chelsea, he was rewarded with another established Premier League job, West Ham United. A completely different environment. Less money, more pressure, and expectations from a fan base that won't accept mediocrity. And again, Potter's flopping as this video is being made. An even worse win percentage, an even bleaker picture. And yet, people still like him. Pundits still praise his ideas, fans still call him a nice guy, and maybe he is. But since returning to England, what has he actually done? No trophies, no major achievements, no evidence he belongs at the very top. Graham Potter is a perfect example of the Failing Upwards Theorem. Admired for his philosophy, respected for his personality, but promoted to jobs his CV simply doesn't justify. He wasn't capable of managing Chelsea. He hasn't proven himself at West Ham. But because he's seen as a thinker, a gentleman, a moderniser, football keeps giving him chances. And in the harshest way possible, his career shows us, in football, sometimes being the nice guy isn't enough. Frank Lampard's story is a little different from Potter's, but it fits the same pattern. He didn't start out failing upwards, he started out trying to figure out how to manage. After retiring as a player, Lampard began his managerial career at Derby County. And Derby under Lampard? They were solid, steady, and unremarkable. The team started the season in 6th place, and they finished in 6th place. They didn't push for promotion, but they didn't fall either. Mid-table safety doesn't apply here. It was mid-table-ish in terms of stagnation. The point is clear. Lampard kept Derby stable, but didn't achieve the breakthrough that would have immediately marked him as a top-tier manager. Lampard's name alone carried weight. A Chelsea legend, a prolific scorer for England, someone who understood the game from the inside. That reputation was enough for him to leapfrog into one of the biggest managerial jobs in the world, Chelsea. And Chelsea was a different beast entirely. Here, Lampard wasn't managing a championship club with a modest budget. He was managing a multi-million-pound squad, high expectations, European ambitions, and most of all, impatient fans and board members. Lampard's results were mixed at best. Wins came, but so did defeats. His tactical inexperience was obvious. Young players flourished, yes, but the team's consistency wasn't there. And the board, naturally, wanted trophies yesterday. Lampard was shown the door. Most managers would take a step back, leg their wounds and rebuild their careers in a lower pressure environment. But Lampard didn't immediately disappear. Despite his failures at Chelsea, he was still trusted with other top jobs. Later, Everton took him on as a survival project, showing that reputation, pedigree, and narrative can sometimes outweigh tangible success. The difference between Lampard and a normal failing manager is subtle but key. Lampard had to experiment, to learn, to fail in order to refine his philosophy. His Derby tenure was the training ground, his Chelsea tenure the crash course. And only later, with Coventry and other projects, could he actually try to implement lessons from the past. That's the paradox of the Failing Upwards Theorem. Lampard didn't earn a top job by consistently proving himself. He earned it because of his reputation and the narrative around him. Failure, in a way, became the vehicle that carried him to opportunities he might not have deserved strictly on merit. And it's something we see again and again. Managers climbing, promoted, and handed trust, even when their record suggests caution. Frank Lampard's career reminds us that in football, sometimes pedigree and potential matter more than trophies and results. Sometimes failing is just the first step on a ladder that leads upwards.
Listen, all he's got to do, Man United might not thank me, but get the contract out, put it on the table, let him sign it, let him write whatever numbers he wants to put on there, give him what he's done now since he's come in, and let him sign the contract and go. Ollie's at the wheel, man, he's doing it, he's doing his thing. Man United are back.
That should have been the closing. I should have let you do it tonight.
Good old Ollie is at the wheel. That's how it felt when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer first arrived at Manchester United. A name steeped in nostalgia, a man who had scored that unforgettable goal in Spain, and someone fans immediately trusted to bring back the glory days. But let's start at the beginning. Solskjaer's managerial career kicked off in Norway. He took over Molde FK and things went well. A decent record, some domestic trophies, a promising start, showing he could at least manage a team and achieve results. Nothing spectacular on a European scale, but enough to get noticed. Then came Cardiff City in the Premier League. And it was miserable. The team struggled under his management. Results were poor, and he couldn't keep them up. Relegation followed. On paper, this should have been a career-defining failure, the kind that sends managers back down the ladder. But football doesn't always play by the rules. Solskjaer was a Manchester United legend, and when United's board needed a quick fix after Jose Mourinho's departure, they turned to him. Why? Nostalgia. Sentiment. Hope that the man who once scored the winning goal in Spain could somehow steer the club back to its former glory. And here's where the Failing Upwards Theorem comes alive. Solskjaer didn't suddenly become a tactical genius. He didn't have a CV full of top-level silverware. What he had was his name, his legend, and the hope of fans who longed for the old Manchester United. The result? He was handed one of the biggest managerial jobs in world football. What came of it? Mixed results at best. Big wins, crushing defeats. Promising runs in the Champions League, followed by embarrassing exits. The team never really fully clicked. And yet, despite the inconsistency and lack of tangible success, he stayed for years. Longer than many managers would survive after similar performances. Solskjaer is the embodiment of football sentiment outweighing merit. His time at Cardiff should have been a red flag, but United trusted him anyway. Fans loved him, pundits praised his man management, and the board, they clung to hope. In the end, Ollie shows us how the Failing Upwards Theorem works in practice. You don't always need a stellar record to land a massive job. Sometimes, a familiar name, a cherished memory, and the right timing are enough. And in football, that's often all it takes to climb, or at least stay, near the top. If Graham Potter, Frank Lampard and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer climbed their way into big jobs through a mix of promise and nostalgia. Andrea Pirlo's story is something else entirely. His is the purest example of failing upwards in football. Pirlo retired in 2017, one of the greatest midfielders of his generation, a legend at AC Milan, a hero at Juventus, a World Cup winner, a player admired around the globe for his elegance, his intelligence, his calmness under pressure. But as a coach, he had no experience, zilch. Pirlo had never managed a professional game in his life. In fact, he was originally appointed as Juventus' under-23 coach in 2020, a safe, quiet first step into management, a place to learn and to grow and to figure things out away from the spotlight. But before he could even take charge of a single youth match, Juventus promoted him straight into the hot seat of the first team. One of the most prestigious clubs in world football, with Champions League expectations, league dominance to protect, and the pressure of managing Cristiano Ronaldo. No managerial CV, no tactical record, just a name, just nostalgia. Just the idea that if Pirlo could read the game of the player, surely he could do the same as a manager. And what happened? Juventus stumbled. He did win the Coppa Italia, yes, but in the league, Juventus lost their dominance to Inter. In Europe, they crashed out of the Champions League far too early. His tactical ideas were inconsistent, his man management questionable, and the team lacked identity. It wasn't a complete disaster, but it was hardly a success. For a club used to winning Serie A year after year, it wasn't good enough. Pirlo was sacked after just one season. And here's where the theorem shows its power. Despite his total lack of managerial experience, despite failing to live up to expectations, Pirlo didn't vanish into obscurity. He was rewarded with another job, this time in Turkey, at Fatih Karagümrük, and later even another role in Serie A. All because of who he is, what he represents, and the aura that comes with being Andrea Pirlo. In football, pedigree isn't just about what you've done as a coach. Sometimes it's about who you were as a player. Pirlo is proof that reputation can catapult you into jobs you haven't earned yet. And even after falling short, opportunities keep coming. Andrea Pirlo's journey shows us the ultimate truth of the failing upwards theorem. In football, the ladder isn't always climbed by results. Sometimes it's climbed by name alone. And there we have it. When you look at Graham Potter, Frank Lampard, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Andrea Pirlo, and even someone like Russell Martin, the failing upwards theorem comes alive. Each of these managers has landed opportunities their CVs arguably don't deserve. They're not winning major trophies, not transforming teams, and in some cases outright failing, and yet bigger jobs keep coming their way. This cuts against the very ethos football claims to be built on, meritocracy. The idea that hard work, results, and success on the pitch should be what defines your rise in the game. If you win, you move up. If you lose, you don't. Simple. But football doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it's not about merit. It's about nostalgia. A beloved ex-player given a shot because of memories, not management. It's about nepotism and connections, the right name, the right friends in the right places. And sometimes it's simply about perception, being a nice guy, sounding clever in interviews, or carrying an aura that convinces boards and fans to ignore the lack of substance. Of course, not everyone who looks like they're failing upwards actually is. In my opinion, Brendan Rodgers rebuilt himself at Celtic and proved his worth at Leicester. Mauricio Pochettino didn't fail at Spurs, he overachieved. Mikel Arteta was doubted early on, but now he's showing why Arsenal were right to believe in him. These are managers who justify their careers through results, even if the narrative sometimes says otherwise. But the theorem shows us the uncomfortable truth. Hard work doesn't always pay off equally in football. There are countless coaches grinding in the lower leagues, building success with tiny budgets, waiting for their chance. And then above them, managers with patchy records or no records at all get handed the golden keys to some of the biggest clubs in the world. The Failing Upwards Theorem isn't just about managers, it's about football itself. A sport where meritocracy often takes a back seat to name recognition, sentiment, and connections. And until that changes, don't be surprised if the next failed manager still ends up with a massive job. Because in football, failure doesn't always mean you go down. Sometimes it just means you climb higher. So thank you very much if you've made it this far into my new theorem video. Make sure you comment if you believe there's any other manager who could fit this theorem. I'm sure there's loads out there. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I will see you soon.